Imagine being at the heart of a dispute so intense, so momentous, that it alters the course of a nation forever. What if that dispute occurred between two of the most revered figures in Islam? One, a beloved wife of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the other, a caliph who carried the weight of leading the Muslim Ummah after the Prophet's passing. How could such a conflict not only shake the Muslim community of that time, but also reverberate throughout history, shaping Islamic politics, society, and thought for centuries to come? This, my friends, is the story of the first Fitna, a battle that was fought between the forces of Aisha, the wife of the Prophet, and the forces of Ali ibn Abi Talib, the cousin and son-in-law of the Prophet. The consequences of this battle were profound, as it marked the beginning of divisions within the Muslim Ummah, divisions that still echo today. In the aftermath of the Prophet Muhammad's, peace be upon him, death, the Muslim community was thrust into an uncertain and volatile political landscape. The question of who would lead the Muslim Ummah, who would be the rightful successor to the Prophet, became the crux of the conflict. Abu Bakr, the Prophet's close companion and father-in-law, was chosen as the first caliph, but not everyone agreed with this decision. Aisha, along with others, believed that the leadership should have gone to Ali, the Prophet's closest relative. This disagreement led to the first Fitna, a conflict that would not only challenge the political leadership of the Muslim world, but also spark one of the most important theological and ideological rifts in Islamic history, the split between Sunni and Shia Muslims. Why does the first Fitna matter today? It is more than just a political conflict. It's a conflict of ideas, values, and leadership. It brings to light fundamental questions about governance, authority, and the role of women in Islamic history. More importantly, it raises the question, can two people, both deeply loved and respected, have such opposing visions that their dispute leads to the fracturing of a community? This moment in history asks us to reflect on how we, as a modern Ummah, navigate differences, how we reconcile faith and politics, and how we honor the legacy of our past without allowing it to divide us further. To understand how a conflict as massive as the first Fitna could unfold, we need to first understand the political and social landscape that existed after the death of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The Prophet's passing in 632 CE left the Muslim community without a clear leader, and with it, the question of succession became the most critical issue facing the Ummah. Abu Bakr was chosen as the first caliph by the majority of the companions, but his appointment wasn't without controversy. Aisha, the daughter of Abu Bakr and the beloved wife of the Prophet, was one of the most prominent figures in early Islam. As a strong, intelligent, and passionate individual, she had strong views about who should lead the Muslim community. Aisha, along with others, felt that Ali, the cousin of the Prophet, was the rightful successor, given his close relationship to the Prophet and his role as a prominent figure in the early Islamic community. Aisha's position in early Islamic history cannot be understated. She was not only one of the Prophet's wives, but she was also a key narrator of hadith, the sayings and actions of the Prophet. In fact, Aisha is considered one of the most knowledgeable scholars in early Islam, with a deep understanding of the Quran and hadith. Her intellect, her active participation in public matters, and her role in the early Muslim community set her apart as a powerful voice in the early debates about Islamic leadership. However, after the Prophet's death, her role would take a turn. She became a central figure in a growing political rivalry, particularly when it came to the leadership of the Ummah. The leadership crisis, complicated by differing interpretations of the Prophet's intentions, led to growing tensions between the supporters of Abu Bakr and the supporters of Ali. The tension would eventually lead to the Battle of the Camel in 656 CE, one of the most pivotal moments in Islamic history. Aisha, along with Talha and Zubair, two of the Prophet's companions, led an army against Ali's forces in what would be a tragic confrontation. The battle itself was not only about political control, but also about preserving the integrity of the community. Aisha's involvement was deeply symbolic. She represented the voice of those who felt that the leadership had been wrongly assigned and that the Prophet's family deserved to lead. But what made Aisha take up arms? Was it solely political, or was there a deeper spiritual and emotional element to her defiance? Was her role in the battle driven by a desire for justice for her family, or was she acting out of a belief that she was preserving the unity of the Ummah? What makes the first Fitna so compelling is the complexity of the figures involved. On one hand, Aisha was a revered figure, the mother of the believers, someone who had immense respect within the Muslim community. On the other, Ali was the Prophet's closest companion and the father of the believers' future generations. Both were deeply committed to Islam, yet their visions of what the Muslim community should be were drastically different. This conflict, therefore, wasn't just about two leaders fighting for power. It was a clash of ideologies, of visions for the future of Islam. But why did the Battle of the Camel occur in the first place? What were the underlying causes that led to such a monumental conflict? And what did this battle mean for the future of the Muslim Ummah? To answer these questions, we need to take a deeper look into the political and religious dynamics of the time. Let's now explore the events leading up to the battle and understand the deep divisions that tore the community apart. To understand the Battle of the Camel and its aftermath, we need to explore the political climate of the early Islamic world. Following the death of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, the question of leadership was paramount. While Abu Bakr was chosen as the first Caliph, his leadership was not universally accepted. A faction of the Muslim community, particularly those aligned with the family of the Prophet, believed that Ali should have been appointed as the Caliph from the start. This division, initially simmering under the surface, became increasingly polarized as the Caliphate's authority was challenged. Aisha, who had strong familial ties to Abu Bakr, felt deeply that the leadership should not have gone to Ali. Her political activism, combined with the growing tension between Ali and the supporters of Abu Bakr's appointment, set the stage for open conflict. In 656 CE, the political climate took a dramatic turn. After the assassination of the third Caliph, Uthman ibn Affan, the Islamic community was divided in its response. Uthman's death had led to widespread unrest, and Ali was chosen as the new Caliph in an attempt to restore peace. However, many in the community, including Aisha, felt that Ali had not acted decisively enough in addressing Uthman's murder. Aisha, along with two other prominent companions, Talha and Zubair, decided to raise an army and march to confront Ali. This culminated in the Battle of the Camel, which took place near Basra, in present-day Iraq. The battle was named after the camel that Aisha rode, and it became one of the most tragic and defining moments in early Islamic history. What was the significance of the Battle of the Camel? It wasn't just a military confrontation, it was a battle that represented a deep ideological divide within the Muslim community. On one side were Aisha, Talha, and Zubair, who were fighting for what they saw as the preservation of justice and the rights of the companions of the Prophet. On the other side was Ali, the Prophet's cousin, who felt it was his responsibility to uphold the unity of the Ummah,
even if it meant facing the wrath of those who disagreed with his leadership.
The battle itself ended in a bloody stalemate, with many lives lost on both sides. Aisha, although captured, was treated with respect and sent back to Medina. However, the damage was done. The first Fitna was not only a political war, it was a war that struck at the heart of the unity of the Muslim community.
What is particularly poignant about the aftermath of the Battle of the Camel is that it marked the beginning of a long and enduring rift within the Muslim Ummah. The division between the supporters of Ali, who would later become known as the Shia, and the followers of the first three caliphs, who came to be known as the Sunni, began to solidify. This split would continue to shape Islamic history for centuries to come. The question that continues to be debated is whether Aisha's actions were justified. Was she simply defending her family's right to leadership, or was she acting out of a more personal and emotional desire to avenge the death of Uthman? Did she truly believe that her actions were in the best interest of the Muslim community, or was her defiance a reaction to the power dynamics within the early Muslim world? Regardless of the motivations behind Aisha's involvement, the first Fitna serves as a reminder of the complexities of leadership and loyalty within the Muslim community. Aisha was no ordinary figure. She was the wife of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and her actions carried immense weight. Yet, even the most revered figures in Islam were not immune to the challenges of governance, power struggles, and differing interpretations of justice. The first Fitna, though a political conflict, was deeply spiritual as well. The battle between Aisha and Ali was not simply about power, it was about visions of leadership, justice, and community. These early struggles reflect the larger human questions of how we manage disagreements and how we understand unity and division within a faith community. One of the most profound spiritual lessons we can draw from this conflict is that disagreements in the Muslim community are not inherently a betrayal of faith, but rather a reflection of our collective humanity. The companions of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who are often seen as paragons of virtue, were not immune to the challenges that come with differing opinions. They did not shy away from engaging in difficult debates, but those debates sometimes led to tragic consequences. The Quran, in Surah Al-Hujurat 49:10, speaks to this idea of conflict and resolution within the Muslim community. The believers are but brothers, so make peace between your brothers, and fear Allah, that you may receive mercy. This verse emphasizes that despite our differences, we are still brothers and sisters in faith. The moral lesson here is profound. Even when conflict arises, it is essential to seek peace, reconciliation, and mutual understanding. The first Fitna serves as a stark reminder that division can lead to lasting scars within the community, and it calls on Muslims to remember the principles of brotherhood, respect, and unity in the face of adversity. Aisha's role in this conflict is complex, and understanding it requires a deep dive into her personality, her intellect, and her sense of duty. Aisha, despite her revered position as the mother of the believers, was not afraid to assert her views and act on them. Her involvement in the first Fitna highlights a key lesson. Even the most pious individuals can disagree, and such disagreements do not negate their commitment to Islam. Aisha's involvement in the battle, whether politically motivated, driven by personal loss, or grounded in a desire for justice, was a response to what she saw as an unfair situation. But what does this teach us today? It reminds us that standing for what we believe is right can sometimes lead to unintended consequences. Even noble intentions can result in outcomes that harm the community. Aisha's actions, though motivated by a sincere belief in the importance of justice and leadership, resulted in division. In her case, her spiritual devotion to Islam did not shield her from the political realities of leadership, nor from the painful outcomes of her actions. In contrast to Aisha's actions, Ali's leadership offers another set of lessons for us. Ali, a deeply revered figure in Islamic history, faced the immense challenge of leading a fragmented community. His response to the first fitna was one of patience and restraint. Despite being in a position of power, he sought to preserve the unity of the Ummah and to act in a way that reflected justice and wisdom. Even after the Battle of the Camel, Ali demonstrated an extraordinary capacity for forgiveness and reconciliation, which is a crucial teaching in Islamic leadership. Ali's behavior during the conflict underscores the Islamic principle of sabr, patience, and tawakkul, trust in Allah. His actions remind us that leadership is not about seeking personal glory, but about serving the community with humility and wisdom, even in times of trial. Ali's example calls on Muslims to reflect on their own leadership and how they might serve the collective good rather than personal or sectarian interests. The first fitna had lasting spiritual consequences for the Muslim Ummah. The division between Ali's followers and those who supported the earlier caliphs led to the creation of two distinct groups: the Shia, who viewed Ali and his descendants as the rightful leaders of the Muslim world, and the Sunni, who followed the leadership of the early caliphs such as Abu Bakr, Umar, and Uthman. This schism was not merely political, it was deeply spiritual. The differences between Sunni and Shia beliefs regarding leadership, authority, and the role of the companions of the Prophet are still a central aspect of the theological and ideological divide within Islam today. The moral lessons of the first fitna are critical for understanding this divide. Can we, as an ummah, find ways to reconcile our differences and honor the legacy of the Prophet without letting those differences tear us apart? The challenge is not simply to preserve political unity, but also to ensure that the spiritual health of the Ummah remains intact. The first fitna is not just a historical event, it is a living lesson for us today. In our own communities, we face divisions and disagreements, whether they be political, theological, or social. The first fitna teaches us that conflict is inevitable, but how we respond to it is what truly matters. Do we let our differences lead to greater division and hostility, or do we seek reconciliation and understanding? The Quran reminds us of the importance of unity, but it also acknowledges the reality of human differences. In Surah Al-Imran 3103, Allah commands, "And hold firmly to the rope of Allah all together, and do not become divided." This verse calls us to hold on to the unity of the faith while acknowledging that differences will occur. It is through faith, wisdom, and patience that we can bridge those gaps and avoid the tragedies of the past. The first fitna marked a pivotal moment in the history of Islamic governance. Prior to the conflict, the concept of leadership within the Ummah was fluid, with a deep emphasis on collective consultation, shura, and respect for the Prophet's companions. However, after the first fitna, the idea of legitimate leadership in Islam became contested, leading to the development of two major schools of thought regarding Islamic authority, Sunni and Shia. The division between these two groups was not merely a theological split, it had real, lasting political consequences. The Sunni tradition emphasized the legitimacy of the first four caliphs, the Rashidun, while the Shia tradition believed that only Ali and his descendants, the al-Bayt, family of the Prophet, had the divine right to lead. This division became a defining characteristic of Islamic political identity for centuries to come, influencing everything from the structure of the Caliphate to the broader dynamics of Muslim empires.
In the aftermath of the first Fitna, Ali became the fourth Caliph, but his reign was fraught with challenges. Despite his wisdom, patience, and spiritual leadership, his rule was unable to heal the rift created by the conflict. His assassination in 661 CE and the subsequent rise of the Umayyad dynasty further entrenched the division between Sunni and Shia Muslims, as the Umayyads were largely supported by the Sunni faction. The idea of a single, unified Muslim caliphate was forever altered, with different regions and factions adopting separate political and religious systems. The Umayyad dynasty, which emerged after Ali's death, marked a new phase in Islamic history, one characterized by dynastic rule. The Umayyads, who were Sunni, established their capital in Damascus and expanded the Islamic Empire significantly. However, their rule was met with resistance from those who believed that the leadership should remain within the Prophet's family. This resistance eventually gave rise to the Abbasid revolution in the 8th century, which resulted in the establishment of the Abbasid Caliphate. The Abbasids, who were also Sunni, shifted the political power to Baghdad, where they became the central political authority in the Islamic world. However, the rift between Sunni and Shia continued, as the Shia community sought to assert their claim to leadership, believing that the true caliphate belonged to Ali's descendants. This struggle for legitimacy, authority, and leadership between Sunni and Shia factions would shape much of Islamic history in the centuries that followed. Even today, the legacy of the first Fitna is evident in the ongoing political dynamics of the Muslim world, with the Sunni-Shia divide continuing to influence regional politics, conflicts, and alliances. From the struggles in Iraq and Syria to the tensions between Iran and Saudi Arabia, the deep political divide rooted in the first Fitna has played a significant role in shaping the modern Islamic landscape. While the first Fitna is often framed as a battle for political leadership, there are several misconceptions about the motivations and actions of the key figures involved. One common misconception is that Aisha's rebellion was purely about personal ambition or a desire for power. However, historical evidence suggests that Aisha's actions were driven by a sense of justice and loyalty to the memory of the Prophet. Her belief that Ali's leadership was flawed was not born out of personal animosity, but from a conviction that the Ummah had been wronged. Aisha's involvement in the battle was part of her broader effort to ensure that the community remained on a just and righteous path. Similarly, it's important to recognize that Ali's leadership was not without its own challenges. While Ali is often portrayed as a model of patience and wisdom, his leadership was not universally accepted, and the political struggles he faced reflect the complexity of early Islamic governance. Ali's decision to engage in battle against Aisha and her supporters was not an easy one, but it was a response to the threat posed by a divided community and the need to preserve unity. The first Fitna, therefore, invites us to reflect on the complexities of leadership, justice, and loyalty. It challenges us to consider how we approach differences of opinion within the Muslim community today and how we can resolve conflicts without allowing them to fracture the unity of the Ummah. In today's world, the lessons from the first Fitna are more relevant than ever. As Muslims, we must navigate political and ideological differences that often threaten the unity of our community. From differences in how we interpret religious texts to disputes over political governance, the legacy of division from the first Fitna continues to shape modern Muslim societies. One of the key lessons from this conflict is the importance of seeking reconciliation and understanding in times of disagreement. The Quran calls on believers to hold firmly to the rope of Allah altogether and do not become divided.
Surah Al-Imran 3:103, a verse that highlights the importance of unity even in the face of conflict. The first fitna teaches us that while differences may arise, it is essential to remain committed to the core values of Islam: justice, mercy, and compassion, and to work toward reconciliation rather than division. The legacy of the first fitna also serves as a reminder that leadership in Islam is not about personal glory or power, but about serving the Ummah with humility and wisdom. Whether we are leaders in our communities or followers, we are all called to uphold the principles of justice and fairness in our dealings with one another. As we come to the end of our exploration of the first fitna, we reflect on the profound and lasting impact this event has had on the Muslim world. From the death of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which left a vacuum in leadership, to the rise of the political and theological rift between Sunni and Shia Muslims. The events surrounding the first fitna shaped the future of Islamic governance and identity. Aisha, the mother of the believers, played a crucial role in this conflict. Her actions in the Battle of the Camel, driven by a belief in the rights of the companions of the Prophet and a desire for justice, sparked a divisive and tragic war. On the other side, Ali, a figure revered for his wisdom and patience, sought to preserve the unity of the Ummah, even as his leadership was contested. The first fitna teaches us valuable lessons about leadership, loyalty, and the consequences of division. It shows us that even the most noble individuals, those closest to the Prophet, were not immune to the challenges of governance, differing opinions, and the harsh realities of political power. It also reminds us that differences within the Muslim community are not a new phenomenon, but part of our shared history. So, what can we learn from this monumental event in Islamic history? The first fitna, tragic as it was, offers us a crucial lesson. Unity and justice should always be our guiding principles. While disagreements and differences of opinion will always exist within any community, Islam calls on us to uphold the values of peace, reconciliation, and mutual respect. The Quran reminds us in Surah Al-Hujurat 49:10, "The believers are but brothers, so make peace between your brothers." This call to brotherhood is not limited to a specific time or place. It resonates deeply today as we navigate our own challenges and divisions within the Ummah. We must ask ourselves, how can we build bridges instead of walls? How can we move forward with a spirit of reconciliation even when faced with profound differences? The answer lies in following the example of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and his companions, seeking peace, practicing patience, and placing the collective well-being of the Ummah above personal or sectarian interests. As we reflect on the first fitna, let it serve as a reminder that division, though painful, does not have to be permanent. The path forward is one of dialogue, understanding, and mutual respect. Let us strive to be united in our faith, our commitment to justice, and our love for Allah and His Messenger. In the words of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, as narrated in Sahih Muslim, the strong one is not the one who is able to overpower others, but the one who controls himself in times of anger. Let this wisdom guide us in times of conflict and division, as we seek to embody patience, reconciliation, and unity in our own lives. May Allah grant us the wisdom to learn from the past, the patience to navigate our differences, and the strength to uphold the unity of the Ummah.